We shall see. Hi, Orit. How's it going?
Hi there.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Can you see the shared screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to see how many people join. If we only have a few, it won't matter. I'm going to deliver the presentation the same way, so you'll still get all the valuable content.
Okay.
Where are you from? Where are you calling in from?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last part of the question. Where am I from?
Sorry. Yeah, where are you from?
I'm originally from Montreal, Canada, but living in Israel for 7 years and currently living in Tel Aviv.
Oh, nice. Been living in Israel for 7 years?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. All right. What
How
made
about
you? I always have to ask. I always have to ask, what made you move to Israel and stay for 7 years?
So I grew up in an Israeli home. It was actually my first language, and we spent a lot of my summers in Israel. My extended family lives in Israel. And I came 7 years ago to pursue my master's in organizational psychology in the Technion. And then a year later, I decided to make it official and make Aliyah.
Very, very cool. Wait, organizational psychology is something that I'm also fascinated by.
Okay.
Are you currently doing that now?
I work as an HR manager. I actually just left my job a month ago. But yeah, I've been working for the past 5 years or so.
Gotcha. But so for organizational psychology, are usually roles through HR? Is that usually how it works?
So it's a very wide-ranging field, and there's a lot that you can do with it. I worked as a sole HR function in organizations and also a first HR function. So it included also developing a lot of organizational development procedures, like performance reviews and many other things. So it's kind of a mixture of the two, and also hiring practices, etc. A lot of people consulting for managers and business units. So yeah, it's a bit I've done a mix of both, really.
And okay, very cool. So in other words, so you said it's a bit of like performance review strategies. It's like people consulting in a sense of like managers, like helping them with their teams, or also people coming to you with problems as well?
Both, actually. I worked in a global company that had 12 offices worldwide, that many different cultures, India, Hong Kong. So a lot of the time, you kind of have to adapt yourself to the culture, and there are different issues that arise in different cultures. And also locally, the managers might have some issues with new hires or people on their team, how to solve problems, how to say things correctly, and a lot of the times being a mediator between the employees and the managers as well, depending on the situation.
Very cool. Do you like it?
Yeah, it's very challenging. You definitely have to be a people person and empathetic, and there's a lot of discretion involved as well. But essentially, it's about gaining trust, senior management and the people, and being able to liaise between both. And there's never a dull day. There's always issues that come up, problems to solve. So yeah, people are very interesting to work with. It's also very hard sometimes as well,
Yeah.
because you're always at the forefront of issues.
Oh, that's what I was just going to ask. If you're open to sharing, is like what percent of the job would be like putting out fires versus maybe program development?
So I think it really depends on the organization. Like the last organization that I worked for almost 2 years, after a year, there was a new CEO that came, and there was a lot of fires that had to be put out, kind of liaising between, his new vision for the organization and employees who had been there for a while, and kind of helped establish the place. So I would say that my past 10 months, there have been a lot of putting up out fires. But, you feel that you're a very important individual in managing that change. And I've definitely left the organization, I think, a better place than what it was when the CEO first came, and it was very chaotic. But it also, there's a lot of burnout involved with that as well, because sometimes you're an employee as well, and you have to take care of your well-being, both mental and physical, and have the time for that as well. So it's about finding the balance.
Of course, of course. But in your type of position, you're saying there's a lot of burnout that tends to happen.
Yeah, I think definitely when you're the only HR function, and in my positions, I was also the first, so it was establishing a lot of things from scratch and training people and establishing the HR culture in the organization. So a lot of footwork there. But I think maybe in large organizations where the function is already established, perhaps things run smoothly, and you don't have to consistently prove yourself, and the importance of that process to manage, etc.
Gotcha. Okay, well, yeah. So I have to be honest with you. Usually we have about 10 to 15 in our workshops. And so for whatever reason, it's just you. And so we can make it just like a kind of like a one-on-one. Like it'll just be a very casual thing. I'll still go through everything with you if you like. And like, it's just like a very personal, casual thing. Because it's good stuff. Like it's like, it works well.
Right. I see another person signed up, Sabina. Do you see her?
Oh, let me see. Oh, I didn't even see her. Oh,
yeah.
Hey, Sabina. How's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Sorry I missed you there.
No, no worries. I hope it's okay if I have my video off. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine. If you at some point want to have your video on, it's even better because I love seeing faces. No pressure, of course, but it's a little bit better, but no pressure. All right, guys. So because it's just us two, I actually am really excited about it because it'll be a like a personal presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. So I first want to, because of the style of this presentation, guys, like if at any point you have questions, like just jump in and ask the questions. Like I would say use the chat if you really want to, but because it's us three, like just ask away. And so I think I'll just start with just sharing a little bit about myself, like how I got to this point of creating a networking conversation strategy and just really who I am. So my name's Yoel, or Yoel, whichever one is easier for you to pronounce. It is a Hebrew name. And my background is basically in corporate events, video marketing, business development, and career coaching. And right now, it says Masa community because I am a volunteer with Masa. And so I help push out career content and just basically to help out like as many Oleh Hadashim as I can, just really anybody who wants to improve in their career, but especially people living in Israel, because I've been here now for 2 years and I've kind of gone through the struggle and I've gone through the hustle like some of you guys may have. Sabina, how long have you been in Israel for, if you're even in Israel? Actually, where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm actually in Haifa. I'm in the MITF program.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, that's cool to know.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of my intention behind giving out these workshops. It's rare to have 2 people, but I think it's actually pretty cool that we have 2 people today. So it'll be a more personal workshop. And so my story is that I came to Israel here's how I'm going to give you the quick story. And guys, by the way, if you want this presentation at the end and like another networking document that I have, I'm happy to share that. I'll share my email at the end. But basically, my story is that I came to Israel 2 years ago, and I came through a Masa internship program when I first came. And so my setup was, I knew I was going to make Aliyah before coming to Israel, and so that's why I wanted to go through this Masa program to basically give myself a platform, give myself a network, give myself resources to really make this life work, because you know, it's a big move to basically move your whole life to a new country and you don't know anybody. I only have one cousin that lived here. And so because I was doing an internship, I only had a set amount of money that I could really survive off of, like 5.5 months. Like after that, it was going to be a really sticky situation for me. And so during my internship, which I was working for free at, I was basically trying to find work during this whole time. And I was working 40 to 50 hours for free during the internship. And I was working so much because I was actually doing a few internships at once because I really wanted to gain the experience, make the connections, and just kind of really integrate. But I needed to find work in those 5 months. And I was looking for work in video marketing. And I wasn't finding online anything that I really wanted. And so my gut told me that I'm here in a new place and I have to network. Like I need to talk to people to kind of find my way here and to find a job through networking. And so long story short is through networking, through the strategies that I'm going to share with you guys today, is how I was able to acquire a job. And so I'm really going to break down exactly what I did specifically in that conversation to actually find work and to be offered a job. And at the conclusion of the story is after 5.5 months, I ended up getting a job with one of the top video animation companies in Israel, leading their business development. And I pretty much did that through what I'm going to share with you guys today. So we can get into it. So I want to kind of set the scene for what's going on here. I've given another workshop on how to actually create professional connections, how to chat with them, how to reach out to them, how to follow up with them, and then how to have the conversation. So what this presentation is going to focus on is once you've created a connection and you guys have set up a date to meet, like you've set up a coffee date, you've set up a phone call, you've already done the work to create that connection, then you have to have a conversation, right? And so what we're going to be talking about is how to have that effective and meaningful conversation, and basically what has worked for me, like what I did to have this effective and meaningful conversation. And I also want to note that, just to kind of set the scene a little bit more, is that the way that you set up this conversation is that you asked to learn from the person that you're connecting with. Like the way that I networked the most was I was asking everybody for advice about video marketing, because I learned that you don't reach out and say, hey, I want a job. Hey, do you know anybody that can give me a job? I would always say, hey, I'm really interested in this field. I see you have, some extensive experience in this field. Would you be open to sharing your advice and your personal and professional journey with me so that I can learn how to best navigate this professional field? And so I reached out asking for advice. And so that's the setup. They would say, yeah, sure, Yoel, no problem. I'm more than happy to meet with you and share my experience and share any advice that I can give you. So that's the setup. And so now we're on the phone call, or we're moving into, or we're walking up to the coffee date with our professional connection. And so at the end of this presentation, what I really hope that you guys walk away with are these 4 elements. And the idea here is that in this conversation that you guys will have with your professional connections is to do these 4 things, is to understand how to create a lasting relationship, how to create a potential career opportunity, how to create substantial learning, and how to expand your network and create new contacts, all within this one conversation that could be between 30 minutes to an hour. So the topics for today are going to be very straightforward, but these 4 topics are going to break down how we reach those 4 elements that I just shared. So the first one is obviously really straightforward, the thank you when you first meet with someone. The second one is how to strategically answer the tell me about yourself, which always happens when you first meet somebody for a coffee date or a phone call, and why that scenario right there is quite important. And then step 3, creating a meaningful conversation, especially through asking meaningful and the right questions. And then step 4 is expanding your network and creating new contacts. So that way, at the end of your conversation, it's not it. You can continue to network, and they're going to be able to share other contacts with you guys. Do you guys have any questions so far? Cool. So step 1, like I said, super straightforward. I know you guys know how to do this already, but I left it in here because some folks may overlook this piece, and it's just like a simple thank you, right? When you connect with someone. And this is more or less how I said my thank yous when I first met with them. I would say, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate the opportunity to learn more about this industry from someone like yourself, since it is a field I wish to work in, and learn more about how to best navigate it. And they would say, sure, no problem, Yoel. So how can I help you? Or more than likely, they will say, hey, well, why don't you first tell me a little bit about yourself? Because, you know, we've never met before. And I'm going to share why telling about yourself is important. But first, I want to note that if for whatever reason, they don't say, tell me about yourself, they just say, how can I help you? Then I would highly recommend that you say, hey, you know what? I just first want to share a little bit about myself just to help us focus the conversation. And so that way you can really understand what it is that I'm going for. And they're always going to say, sure, no problem. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself. That sounds nice. So why the tell me about yourself is important. This is where the space for a career opportunity has been created. It's also created during the meaningful questions piece, but this is a really interesting piece to create that career opportunity. So what happens when they say, tell me about yourself, is you now have, or what I've experienced is a 30 to 60-second window where you almost have created this informal interview with this professional connection, right? You're talking with someone who is an experienced professional in your field of interest, and they're saying, tell me about yourself, similar to how they would say in an interview. And so now you have about 30 to 60 seconds to give an introduction about yourself that covers these 3 elements. An introduction about who you are, about yourself, your top professional experiences, and your professional aspirations. And guys, I'm going to give you everything that I share. I'm going to share examples of like exactly how the final product looked like. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging with just conceptual stuff, but I do need to go over the conceptual stuff. So then when I give you the final product, it makes more sense. And so that's what's happening in this 30 to 60-second window, is you now have the chance to show off the best professional version of yourself. I wouldn't recommend just leaving it up to chance and just kind of winging it to see like what comes out, is to actually take the time to craft and engineer an introduction that allows you to share the best you that you can possibly share in those 30 to 60 seconds. And the reason you want to do that, and what's happened to me, is that when I've really taken the time to get a good introduction down, I can see it in their eyes that when I say everything that I need to say, they'll say, oh, I did not realize that I'm dealing with a person of such value. I didn't realize that you come with such an extensive background. And so they'll start to think, so do I have a position for them maybe? Or do I know somebody that has a position for them? Or they might start to give you ideas. And so what's happened to me in this window is that I've noticed that because I came prepared in that 30 to 60-second window, people really wanted to help me out. Sometimes there was positions that were offered there. Sometimes they said, you know, I have someone that I know that is looking for someone with your background. Or they would say, you know what, we're looking for someone that has a similar background to you. Or they would say, you know what, like, have you tried looking into this company, or have you tried this idea? And so it's a really interesting window. It's a really interesting situation that you've now created by giving that really well-engineered introduction. So if you have any, and so we're going to get into kind of what that looks like. So the next question might be, how do you build a 30 to 60 second effective introduction? And so there are 5 points that I would recommend. The first one is a few words about who you are. Second is identify your most impressive and valuable knowledge, skills, and or experiences. Third is share your professional goal or vision. Fourth, tell your origin story, what inspired you. And fifth is tailor your introduction. So let me just briefly mention what I mean by each of those. The first piece is just kind of saying, who are you? Like where are you from? Like when did you make Aliyah? Just something, 5, 6, 7 words that just kind of share a really short story about who you are. Second is I would recommend looking over your CV and then identifying 3 to 6 of your top knowledge, skills, and or experiences. And just to kind of select which ones are your top ones. They could be the top companies you worked at. They could be the top experiences you've had. They could be the top projects. They could be volunteer experiences. It might even be things that aren't on your CV, but are super relevant to this conversation and are something that is really impressive about you. Third is share your professional goal and vision. And what I mean by this is just, what are you trying to really do professionally? Like, where are you trying to go professionally? Like, if you can, like, what is your 5-year vision kind of thing? And in this section, if you're thinking, well, I'm not really sure what I even want to do in 1 year from now or 2 years from now, that's okay. But for these meetings, for these coffee dates, phone calls, I would recommend coming up with something. Come up with something that you can deliver, because it looks really good when you can say where it is that you're trying to go. Between you and I, like, you can change that right after the meeting, right? Like, you're not stuck in that, but it looks great when they hear that you have a goal and a vision for your future. It makes you look like a much more serious professional. Fourth is tell your origin story. So what inspired you to want to work in this field in the first place? What inspired you to want to do this profession in the first place? And fifth, tailor your introduction. What I mean by that is maybe you have a few different fields of interest. Maybe you're networking in a few different professional fields. And so I would recommend having a customized introduction for each field of interest. So let's say you are interested in HR, then I would recommend having an introduction that highlights all of your knowledge, skills, and experiences for HR. But if you're also interested in architecture, then I would also create an introduction specifically around highlighting everything that is awesome about you for architecture. And even though it's not going to tell your full story, you just want to show that you are a pro in that specific field. So when I was networking for a few different fields, I set up a few different types of introductions for each field. And to be honest with you, I just made myself look like that was my only field of interest, and that's what I wanted to do. And I wasn't thinking about anything else. Like, if I was going for video marketing, then that's all I wanted to do. Like, I didn't make it sound like I was interested in architecture. I didn't talk about architecture. I just was like, here is what is great about me for video marketing. So that's what I mean by tailor your introduction. Guys, any questions so far?
Just back to the first slide. I said, introducing yourself and asking for advice and that thank you. How would you do it, or how would you phrase it if you've been in the industry for a couple of years and this isn't you just trying to get into the industry, but perhaps, trying to get to your next role or whatever it is?
So it's a great question. So the way that I would frame it is to say something along the lines of, this industry is a really, really big industry. And although I've been in this industry for 7+ years, there is always so much to learn, and there's always a way that I can grow. And so I want to understand how I can get to that next level of my role, how I can advance in my field, even though I've been in that field for 7 years. And so people will understand that, even though you've been in an industry for 7 years, it doesn't mean that you can't still grow in that industry. Everyone's always trying to look to how you can get to that next level. So that's the way that I would frame it, is that even though I am very confident in my abilities in this industry, even though I have a lot of experience, there's always room to grow, and there's always room to elevate your game. And I want to get to the next level. And so I want to understand, and so I would love advice on how I can go about doing that. Does that help?
Yeah, great, thanks.
And in that case, you're probably going to be networking with some pretty high up people, you know. But also for you, maybe not. Maybe you might network with someone who doesn't have actually as much experience as you do, but they might be a really good connection. And so in your case, I would maybe lower myself down, and I would still ask questions that you still might want to know, that you might already kind of know the answer to, but it still allows you to network with that person. You know, like at that point, I know it kind of feels like a little bit of a hustle, but sometimes that's just kind of what you have to do, is you kind of have to play that game. And I've been in a position where, you know, I've talked with someone who I didn't think had really any more experience than me, but they were working in a company that I would love to be a part of. And so, and I didn't see any open jobs, but I wanted to connect with this person. And so I kind of, the framework that I use is saying like, hey, you know, I really value the position that you're in. You know, I'm looking to do something similar myself. And so I would love to understand what your professional journey has been in order to get to where you are today. Because I'm in like in a similar stage in my career. And so you're not saying that you're any lower than them. You're not saying that you're any higher than them. You're saying that I'm in a similar stage, and I want to understand how you got to where you are. Even though I might have felt that I had more experience, that still gets me in the door to somebody that is connected to a company or something that I want to be a part of or learn more about. So yeah. And if you have other, like, if my answers stem more questions, like, please feel free to ask them. So guys, so then now that I've kind of broken down what the introduction, how to build it, before you start reading it, I'm going to read it to you guys in a second. But I do just want to note that the delivery of it is also quite important. So I would recommend that you do it in an excited but very casual tone, because it's not an interview, right? Like, it's a conversation. You're asking just to have like a talk with somebody. And so they're not expecting you to pitch yourself or brag about yourself, but people do want to know about who you are. And so this is kind of the tone that I would always have. It's just like an excited but just casual tone, almost like you weren't expecting them to ask the "tell me about yourself" question, but you know that it's coming, or you're going to create it, and then you can deliver this. So, you know, let's say the conversation goes like this. Hey, thanks very much for taking the time to meet with me. Sure, you will, no problem. Before we start, would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself? And I'll say, sure. So I made Aliyah 2 years ago from the US, and my goal is to work in video production as a content developer and producer, creating meaningful and valuable marketing content, because I love the limitlessness of the work, and I'm amazed and love the incredible impact video is able to have on others and for your own business. I've had 5 years of experience in video production, including working in a big tech company in the US, creating and producing their video marketing content. In Israel, I've worked with a handful of different film and TV production companies, as well as a video marketing agency leading their international business development. And today, I work in a film and TV business as a film and TV business analyst with a movie and TV AI company. But I'm really interested in working and focusing on the video marketing field to contribute to the amazing impact I know it can have. So I'm eager to learn as much as I can about it and find my way in it, which is why I'm really happy we're able to meet today. And so that's something that I've used in the past. And obviously right now I read it to you guys, but as I share here, I practiced this over and over and over again until it sounded totally natural, until it was something where I could just say, like, it was almost like I didn't expect it. It was just kind of a part of me. Before I get into, this is kind of stuff talking about the delivery of it. Do you guys have any questions about this? Okay, cool. So a handful of things I would recommend is the practicing. Like I would practice for hours until I finally got it down, especially if I had a few different introductions that I was delivering. And those hours don't even count the hours that takes to actually engineer like a carefully crafted introduction, because obviously you have so much more to offer than just what's written there. And so you kind of have to put it into this 30 to 60-second introduction, which is not always the easiest thing to do. So practice a lot. The next thing would be using your intuition to feel out if that introduction feels right. Like mine was about 60 seconds, which is the max that I would do an introduction. You know, like less is better. And so as you're practicing, if it feels too long, if it feels too wordy, then cut it down. You know, like as you practice and as you write, there's going to be this point where it feels good. Like it feels good when you say it. It feels right when you deliver it. And so use your intuition to understand what feels right to you. Keeping it humble also kind of plays into your intuition. If you're writing that introduction and it sounds like you're showing off too much and you're bragging too much and you're saying I was responsible for this and responsible for that, and you just feel like you're showing off, then calm it down, then tone it down a bit. Because as you know, it's not an interview. You asked for their advice on something. So they're not expecting to give you a job. They're not expecting you to pitch them on anything. So the way that I did it is I hope that was a good example, that I truthfully feel that I'm 10 times more impressive than what's written there, right? Like I have so much more to offer. And if I'm in an actual interview, like I would maximize it and to make myself the absolute best. But here, you're kind of walking a fine line, right? And so you need to kind of match the vibe of the conversation, which is, I'm keeping it humble, I'm keeping it casual, but you don't want to make it sound like a pitch, but at the same time, they should know you mean business and that you are a valuable professional, that you're not just here to have a conversation, that like you mean business and that you can be of high value to them or to anybody that they know. But you don't expect anything. You're just like, this is just like a strong intro of who I am. And just a quick side note, these introductions, I've used them in a multitude of different scenarios. Like they don't just work when you have coffee dates or phone calls. Like if you have nailed down this 30 to 60-second introduction, you can use it in all things related to networking, like any networking events, job fairs, career expos, any tell me about yourself scenario, interviews, job applications, LinkedIn summary, career programs and activities, and of course, coffee dates and phone conversations. A nice way to look at it is like a verbal business card, that it's a professional and personal business card that you have locked and loaded to deliver at any time, in any moment, so that let's say that you were to go to an actual coffee shop, but just for coffee, and the guy or the gal behind you, you know, you start up a conversation and they're in your field of interest, right? Like you're like, oh, like you work in something that I would love to do. And they turn to you and they say, well, what do you do? Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then boom, you have something that's well crafted, well engineered, that you can basically, you're not pitching them, but you are. You basically have something that you can share with them that's going to show off your best self. So that way that you know in that moment, you gave everything you could to make something of that situation, so that you don't leave that coffee place and think to yourself, oh man, did I say the right thing? Like I should have mentioned this about myself or that about myself. I feel like this would have been more impressive. You already crafted it. You have already worked on that. Like it's in your back pocket to pull out at any time. So if that scenario were to just creep up on you, you're ready. And so it kind of, this allows you to be ready for any of those moments, right? It's a classic elevator pitch. If you're in an elevator and all of a sudden somebody that you would love to work with asks you about yourself and you have 30 seconds to get to your floor, you can bust this out and basically give them who you are in a really concise, well-crafted 30 to 60 seconds. So we just talked about only the first 2 minutes of the conversation, right? Like that's just, you know, thank you, this is who I am. And then you have really the meat and potatoes of the conversation, and where the meaning and the relationship will actually be created. And so the way that has really worked for me is I would prepare questions that I was genuinely interested in knowing the answers to, right? Like I wasn't there just to tell them about who I am and pitch them in 30 to 60 seconds and then hope that I land a job. I have to tell you guys that after those 30 to 60 seconds, most of the time they will just say, great, how can I help you? And then you roll into your questions. Most of the time, nothing is going to happen after you give that introduction, but things could happen in that moment, and a lot of interesting things could happen. So just creating that space allows for opportunities. I'm still talking about the first 2 minutes. Allows for opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't be able to gain just from applying online, right? Applying online, I'm not saying this is not a substitute, by the way, for applying online. I would recommend both. Like you go hard in applying online and also in networking. Like both work great. But applying online is just going to give you a yes or no. Either you have a job or you don't. This also allows you to still land a job potentially. It allows you to actually gain or get a job that is not listed online or public anywhere. Like the job that I got was not a job that was listed anywhere. It just happened to be that I had the background they were looking for, and they said, you know, we weren't looking for anybody, but we could use you. And so a job was created like that. And so that's pretty cool too. You can create opportunities that aren't listed anywhere through this. And so now to creating meaningful conversation is preparing questions you genuinely want to know the answers to. And I stress genuinely because if you are just asking questions you think you're supposed to ask, or you're just kind of filling time because all you really wanted to do was that first 60 seconds, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that vibe. They're going to feel that energy. They're going to feel like this person doesn't really care. And then you're not going to be able to create a lasting relationship. You're not going to be able to really benefit from the last part of this conversation, which is when you go in and you ask for contacts from them. That's going to be the last part, is you are asking for contacts from this contact. And so that's how you're going to continue to network. And I'm going to get to that in a second. But so how we get to a meaningful conversation is you've prepared genuine questions you want to know the answer to. Of course, there could be some questions you already know that you want to ask. But then if you still, if you only can come up with 4, I would recommend doing some extensive research, researching the company, researching the person, researching your industry so you can come up with some really good quality questions. And remember, you're sitting with an experienced professional. So learn as much as you can from them. Like I've been working for a while, and I've been, I have a good amount of experience, but when I sit with the professional, like I make sure that I'm learning as much as I can from them. Like, what are your success tips? Like, how did you get to where you're trying to go? Like, even though I might not get a job from this, like I still want to learn about how they got to where they are. Like I want to pick their brain, and so that way I can grab all of their success tips. And then the last point is, since you might be doing this quite a bit, you can develop new questions based off of what you learned in previous conversations. So each time you're learning something new, but maybe you now have new questions because you now have new knowledge. And so you can create new questions based off the previous conversations. And now I just want to share with you guys, I'm not going to read over all of them, but these are examples of meaningful questions that you can ask. And guys, some of these questions might not apply to you at all. In fact, most of these questions might not apply to you at all, because you need to come up with questions that are specific to your professional field of interest. Some of these are kind of general, but these hopefully will inspire some ideas as to what it is that you can ask. For example, if you are just kind of starting out in your field, you could ask something along the lines of, I would love to learn a bit more about how you got to where you are today and what your professional path may have looked like. Or if it's something that, you've already been in the game for a little bit, like I had done video marketing for some time, I like the question, I think it's the fourth one down, which is, what is your creative process for your content? You know, like you can start getting into the actual work itself. Like, how do you do this? How do you move these pieces around? Like, what's your strategy for this kind of stuff? And so you're basically getting a mentoring session with this professional. And so that's why crafting these questions and really taking the time to think about what you want to ask is going to go a long way, especially because of the following. Because what I learned is that the quality of your questions leads to the quality of the conversation, which leads to the quality of the connection, which leads to the quality of the contacts you will be given when you ask if they have anyone else they can connect you with, as well as leads to the quality of your relationship with them. And I mention this because I've had some conversations that they've really enjoyed talking to me, you know, because I really prepared the questions. Like, they have a lot, they could have a lot of fun in these scenarios, because at the end of the day, you're asking them about your work. You're asking them about their successes, and people are talking about themselves or talking about their profession. And so people can have a lot of fun with these conversations because people love talking about themselves. And if they love what they do, they're going to love talking about their work as well and sharing their successes in their work. And so your questions are going to create that meaningful connection with this person. And these conversations can be a lot of fun for them. And then when you create a meaningful conversation and a fun conversation for them, then at the end, when, is it the next slide? Then at the end, when you ask, and I'm going to read this for you guys in a second too, but when you ask for more contacts, they're going to be way more willing to give you their quality contacts, versus if you just kind of show up, you just ask like 3-4 questions and say thank you for your time, they probably won't really want to help you out too much. But you know, if they know that you've prepared, they now see that you are a valuable professional because of the introduction. You've prepared really great questions for them, and they say, wow, like this person is really hungry, this person is really driven, this person really came prepared. Like, I'm impressed with what's happening right now. Like, I want to see this person succeed. Like, people respect that you come in and that you really want to get to that next level. And so that's why the questions are important, because it could be the difference between one contact or maybe 3 or 4 contacts at the end of it. I've had some folks who, you know, have said, you know, Yoel, this has been really, really great. Like, thank you for preparing all of this and for this conversation. I follow up with me in 24 hours and I can give you some great contacts. And they'll come back the next day and they'll give me like 6 or 7 contacts. And like really good ones, like VPs, CEOs, like people that are like well connected, that are decision makers, where if I'm in front of them, like things can happen. And so that's why like every little detail of the conversation matters. And so here's the last piece of the conversation, which is every time you speak with someone, at the end of the conversation, I always said something like this: I love learning from professionals like yourself. It's a really great way for me to learn about the industry. Do you know anyone else who would be open to connecting with me as we did today, so I can continue to learn about the industry from different perspectives? Now, Now, I understand that if you've been in the industry for 5+ years, that this is going to be a little bit different, right? But you can still tailor it to be something similar, where you can say something like we've mentioned before, where you're always trying to elevate your game, where you're always trying to get to that next level, where you're really trying to make your goals and your aspirations happen. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And if you have anybody else, I would love to learn from them as well. And so you can kind of tailor it to your personality and to what stage and what profession you're in. But I want to let you know that for the next presentation that I give like this, you made me think about that. I'm going to give because this one is more like when you're kind of starting out, but I'm going to provide something that shares more so like when you're in 5+ years, kind of what the ask can look like, because it's the same. The concept is exactly the same, just the wording would be different. And 90% of the time when you go in for this ask, they will always give you at least 1 contact, sometimes more. And the idea here is that you basically will never run out of contacts. Like if they're always giving you at least one, you will always have somebody else that you can do this again with. And so that's how you are always being able to expand your network. You're always being able to give yourself new opportunities to then go about this conversation again, to expand your learning. And that's what I did. Even if I only started out with maybe like 15 people that I knew, I could easily expand it to 100 people just by doing it this way. And if that's if they're giving you one, like if people are giving you 2 or 3, and a lot of people are giving you 2 or 3, like you're blowing up in contacts, like it's going to be hard to run out. And so that's how I recommend expanding and creating a new contact. That's what's worked really well for me. And then it's not in this presentation, but I just want to share with you guys that like the way I was keeping track of all of this is I had an Excel sheet that I was putting everything in. And so when they would give me a contact, I would put in their contact, like whatever information I had, email, company name, phone number, who gave me the contact. So then that way when I reach out, or if I need something else from these folks, like it's all very clean and I know who they are. And that's another thing is with this conversation, like these people that I've connected with, I've gone back to them 4 or 5 months later and asked them for advice on things, and they'll say, hey, Yoel, like so good to hear from you. How are things going since our last conversation? And I'll say, hey, like, do you know how I can do this or how I can do that? Or do you have any advice about this and that? And people are super willing to be like, yeah, like try this or try that, or they'll give me another contact. So that's also something that happens a lot. So
one more question, if that's okay. Do you recommend that the contact make the email introduction, or do you just
it's unnecessary? They could, like, if they want to. Sometimes they will say like, hey, I'll introduce you to this contact. Most of the time they'll just give you an email or they'll give you a phone number and they'll say, just say that I gave you the contact. And literally like referrals work like 100% of the time. If they give you an email, I always put the referral in the email. Like I would put like David Smith referral, and that's all I would put in the email subject line. And although maybe they weren't able to meet with me because they were busy or something like that, 100% response rate. Like everybody always got back to me because it's a referral. Like they don't want to disappoint their friend or their contact. And so, or if it was a text message that I sent, then I would always say like, hey, so-and-so referred me to you. And then I would get into what it is that I'm reaching out for. But so they don't need to do the introduction. If you just say like, this person referred me, they get it. So it's no problem. So what I want to share is worst case scenario of this conversation. So let's say you've gone through the conversation, and like there's no job offer, and you guys might be thinking, man, like, did I do something wrong? Like what happened? Could I have said something better? No, it's just that, most people are not just going to offer you a job just from a conversation. But the good thing is that you've learned something. You've learned a lot, actually, especially if you've prepared well your questions. You've expanded your network with the person you just connected with and then the contacts they've provided. And now you're on their radar if anything comes up. What's happened to me is that 4 to 6 weeks later, people have sent me like available positions, or they've sent me contacts of people who are looking for positions. And the cool thing has been that they've sent me job opportunities that also weren't publicly published anywhere. Just their network was looking for somebody. And so because I connected with them, they then connected me with their connection who was looking for someone. So now you're creating opportunities that aren't public, through doing these kinds of conversations. Like I said, you should definitely still be applying online, but also this type of networking just creates a lot of unique opportunities that you otherwise can't create, or I don't know how else to create them. Like I just know that this really works for me to create unique career opportunities for myself and how I want to network and how I can get in touch with folks. So, it's a pretty good worst case scenario, especially the expanding your network piece and that you're now on their radar. And of course, best case scenario is like, what happened to me is a job opportunity comes along, or maybe down the road. So there's that. Or the last thing I'll say is, if you see an opening at that company whom that connection works for, then you can then reach out to that connection and say, hey, I saw a job opening. Do you think you can put me in touch with HR or give my resume to HR? Like, like none of those benefits come with applying online. And I would say the hit rate can be pretty similar. Like if you were to apply to 50, 70 jobs online, for most people, you're probably only getting 4 interviews, something like that, from, reaching out to 40, 50. And it would be the same thing. Like if you network with 40, 50 people, like job opportunities might only be 4 or 5 people, might only be 3 people. But so I would say the ratio has been very similar. It could be more, by the way. Like those are just numbers that I've experienced, right? But what I'm saying is that the ratio of success is very similar to online. Just this gives you more benefits. So that's why I always recommend doing both. And so, like, for example, like I just gave you that, like, 40, 50 applications or 40, 50 networking situations until like something kind of happens. I've given this advice to one of my best friends, and she's a part-time actress. Like she wants to be a full-time actress. And she's like working part-time to make ends meet, doing something else. And she reached out to her network and she got a couple gigs right away. Like she wasn't, they weren't full-time gigs. There was just like 1 or 2, 3 commercials, but it's still like money that she got. And they were gigs that she was able to have just from having these conversations, because she told these producers what she's going for, who she's trying to become, and they would say, well, you know what, like I have another producer friend who's doing a commercial right now, send me your stuff and like maybe I can connect you guys. And so she got gigs doing it that way, and that was on her first and second try. So like it can happen at any time, like you're creating that situation for yourself. So now this is the last slide, guys, now to kind of bring it all together as to what happened. You connected with someone by asking to learn from them. That's how you set up the connection in the first place. When they say, tell me about yourself, you've created the space for a quick and informal interview, and you have the opportunity to present your best self in that space. You've learned about your field of interest firsthand from a professional by asking genuine questions. Your meaningful conversation created new sustainable contacts for your network, and you planted a seed for potential future opportunities. That's like everything that can go down in these conversations. Guys, that is everything. Do you have any questions? Was it?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Was it helpful? Do you guys think this is stuff that you would be able to use? Does it feel overwhelming? Does it feel like I'm not sure how I would fit it in? Like, what are you guys feeling now?
Well, I definitely agree with everything that you said, especially for someone who's recruited many people. Like, there are always positions that aren't advertised. Like, I've experienced that myself, whether, they're too discreet to be advertised, or we prefer to use our network first and get referrals for people. And that's always easier than, finding a stranger that you have to get to know. So I think there's a lot of truth in everything you said. The challenge, of course, is, jumping into the water and getting your feet wet and reaching out to those people. But great tips. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you guys email me, like I give another workshop that is more of an A to Z kind of workshop, which is basically like, how do you first actually even create connections in the first place? How do you use your network to create connections? How do you reach out to those? I have templates for initial reach outs, for follow-ups, like 1 through 6. And then I also lead into this. So if you guys email me, then I'm happy to send you this presentation and that document as well. And I put this up there. This might apply more for, I'm forgetting your name, but it's not It's not on here. Not in the purple. I'm so sorry. I like your name doesn't come up on your little screen.
My name?
No, not
Oh,
yours.
okay. Okay.
Sorry, what was your name?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
Sabina.
Sabina, that's what it was. Sorry, like I was hovering my mouse over it, and for whatever reason, it didn't want to pop up. Sabina, this might apply more to you, but of course, it's open to anyone. If you want to check out Masa's community career opportunities on there, it's like 1,000-person page, and we post all sorts of content on there. You might already be a part of it, which is maybe how you found this. And then the other one I always share because it's like all of Masa's groups and pages. So like all the WhatsApp groups, I have like 7 WhatsApp groups, like different like sports, dancing, whatever it is. And then all the different pages, Telegram. And so to check that out as well, if you're interested. And yeah, guys, that is it. And if you have any questions about anything, like please feel free to reach out. And if you have success with any of this stuff, I would love to know.
Thank you again. Have a good one.
Great. Thanks so much. It was great meeting you.
All right, Arit, Sabina, bye-bye.
Bye.